Yeah, so I've seen some kids those young kids too, especially, they just love rolling in the dirt and or if they play soccer or whatever or football, the grass stains are so thick, and they'll come home and the mom or dad are just like, oh, don't even get in the car, or they'll get to the house and like you get in the entry, like, okay, that stuff, yeah, the shoes come off outside and everything else comes off at the door, and so yeah, it's funny stuff. We play so many games on turf that our guys don't, you go home and like you're not dirty. Let's just say it that way on the turf. Yeah. This modern turf is so amazing. If it's a little wet, you can slide too far. It's like a slip and slide, so you have to watch that. Yeah, I'll tell guys going into second base, you better grab hold of the thing like a life preserver being thrown to you over the ocean, because I've seen guys on that wet at DBU, if it's wet, they'll slide right past it, and I'm like, grab the base when you go by, or you're going to wind up in left field. Like the left fielder's like, oh, tag him out here. Yeah, so you have to grab hold of that base like it's a life preserver. So anyway, yeah, but you don't tend to get very dirty doing it. Like but it's pretty soft. They have those little black pellets in it. They're if you watch really closely, you'll see a guy slide into that turf, and these little black pellets will pop up. Or you see it in a football game. And what they do is they put the turf down, and the turf has this one-way feeding. You can shove the sand down into it. So like a high school turf football field. And they put these little foam black pellets in there, and they absorb contact. And so it's soft now. I mean, they do a really good job with the sand and those little black pellets. It's a lot softer. Yeah. It doesn't feel harsh to walk on or run on. Or like the old AstroTurf down in the Astrodome was basically just like carpet like this put on top of concrete. And people would complain all the time about dislocated shoulders and stuff like that. The turf was so bad it would get seams in it and they'd trip on it. Nowadays, this turf is it's unbelievable. I mean, the technology on it. I want to put some in for our playground. I want to replace all that out there at the playground and make it all turf. That way, you can still play on it if you've had rain, and it's soft, that kind of thing. You don't have to worry about watering it, like like we got to water it. And the wear and tear, it's hard to get grass to grow because of just how much, people are running over it. And so I'd like to put turf in that area out there and just turf that whole thing in. So I don't know. We talked about doing that. We'll see. DBU had some old turf at the baseball field that they cut up. There was a problem in the original install, and like, you can come get it. Well, but after they put the sand and stuff in that turf, because we were going to come put it out here at the playground, like one square like this is like a ton, because that sand's down in there and you can't get it back out. It's designed to where the sand comes through the fibers, but then can't come back out. So you can't get the turf, you can't get the sand back out of it. And so you have to have a crane. They were like, you'll have to bring a crane, is what they told us. And we're like, because we were thinking, hey, turf off of a football or a baseball field like that'd be great, because we don't need it to be, I'm not worried about someone sliding into home. I just want little kids who are going to run on it. But it turns out once it's been installed, getting it out, you would have to rent a crane and a huge truck. And then once you got it here, you'd have to get a crane, lift it into the yard, and then lay it out, because it's so heavy. So I think it's better off just buying new and having them come install. But anyway. That's my hope, but it's like $20,000 to install turf out there at that playground. So that's pretty expensive. Yeah. Anyway, maybe one day. Well, I hope you guys are well today. So it was kind of cool. Jim was, this is cool. So Decatur, if you know anything about Dallas Baptist University's history, it started out as Decatur Baptist Junior College. Okay, so 1898 started, and you graduated from there in the year 1948. So at Friday, they had the hymn sing at DBU, and you didn't know this was coming, but they acknowledged you as the oldest DBU alumni, having graduated from the feeder school before it became DBU. And so, so they acknowledged you at Friday at the hymn sing, and that was really cool. That was really amazing. So, and you didn't know it was coming. Yeah, I knew. Someone had tipped me off. So, I showed up to see this very cool event. But anyway, so that was fun. That was a lot of fun. So, congratulations. Yeah, and So if they acknowledge you as the oldest living alumni every time they have the hymn sing, 20 years from now, they're still going to be taking pictures of you after That's a lot of pictures. I hope you're ready for that. I mean, that's a lot of coming to hymn sings and lots of pictures. So, Anyway, so that was a lot of fun. Yeah. I was a tad late because of a really difficult circumstance here. We had the funeral for a 9-year-old on Friday. So that was tough. The kid, Elijah, he had some underlying medical issues. His whole life he'd been feeding tube and trach and stuff like that, but still smiled and knew who who was talking to him and stuff like that. He couldn't speak himself, but he was aware, like he would watch cartoons and stuff like that. But apparently had a seizure, trach failed, and that, which they knew was a possibility for him at some point, and he died suddenly. And so that was a really tough funeral. We did that memorial service. We didn't have a casket here, but we did a memorial service Friday at 2. Family was connected to us by virtue of the PAW program. And they had actually just recently moved back to the area, too. And Cindy reached out to them and just said, hey, you guys would you like to do a memorial service? We can do it at the church. Won't cost you anything, give you a chance to grieve and celebrate his life and those kinds of things. So on Friday, we spent about an hour in here just kind of celebrating Elijah's life and encouraging each other with the scripture and things like that. But a bit of a challenging service. 9-year-old is not a fun service to be part of. So so that was kind of tough, kind of a tough situation. I also found out this week my sister-in-law died. Found out on social media, of all things. My brother posted. My brother lives in Oregon. He's a great guy, but he just posted. I knew she'd had cancer for a long time. I knew she was really sick, but she passed away apparently on Tuesday, and he posted Wednesday that she died. So me and my other two brothers were like texting each other, going, "All right, what do we need to do to help him?" And my next oldest brother called him immediately, of course, talked to him and stuff like that. So we're just trying to make sure that he's, they're okay, he's okay. But so anyway, he's my oldest brother by 12, 13, 14 years, I guess. He's a lot older than me. So his wife, I guess she would have been 67, 68, something like that. But she got cancer and been battling it for 4 or 5 years, and finally succumbed to it. But anyway, sweet couple, godly Christian couple, and they're kind of like us in this regard too. They have 2 adopted sons, just like us, and so much older than our kids, obviously, but kind of watching their life, a little bit of a kind of like watching ours a little bit. So that's interesting. But and then so I don't know what he's going to do for a funeral. And that's why my brother called. My brother, who's a pastor in Austin, he and I have dealt with the funeral world a lot, and so he called to kind of see if we could help. What do we need to do to help with that? But anyway, so so it's been a week of some celebrations and some cool things, and and Austin's graduating May 12th. He met with his professor for his project, and it looks like he's going to be okay. Like the project's going to make. He's got a couple of B minuses and 3 A minuses, or an A and a couple A minuses, and then the other 4 classes that he's already gotten grades on, he's gotten 3 A's and a B. So he's good on those 4, and that just leaves us with the 5 in the project. And I think he's going to get A's and B's, or even if one drops down to the C plus area, I don't care, like whatever, like we don't care, just graduate at this point. 31 hours is a lot to take in one semester, and you can survive that with like a 3.5 or something. I'd be like, that's pretty, I'd take that, like you're a college in 4 months, and so if you can get a 3.5 out of all that, that's pretty cool. So anyway, he's supposed to graduate. He's got 2 weeks of school left. That's insane. 2 weeks of school left, and then he's done. And so he's supposed to graduate May 12th, and so that's fun. And yeah, we're trying to see on Michael too. We're trying to see kind of weird deal. He damaged his UCL. He's got I don't know the technical term, but they've shut the orthopedic surgeon. The MRI showed that it's damaged at the point where the UCL contacts the bone. So he says it's not surgical, but he's got to go through 8 weeks of therapy at TMI with no throwing. So he's supposed to do that. And then he's got 8 weeks of a throwing program. And if he goes through all that, then he can throw again 16 weeks from now, which would be right at the start of showing up on a college campus to play college baseball if he decides to do it. He's got an offer, but I just don't know if he's going to take it or not. It's tough. Like, I think he should take it. But I was thinking about this from my own perspective. Your daughter's going through the same thing. It's like, she's going to Iowa, though, right? Because this is in Kansas. Like, hey, Michael, name all the people you know in Kansas. And like, oh, huh? Well, okay, Dan Fitzgerald and, yeah, Will and Ben. He coached Ben. Yeah, they're in Lawrence, though. He's going to be in Heston, which is 2.5 hours away. So I don't know if that's going to help him very much. Yeah, you can name Dan Fitzgerald. That's not going to help him. Yeah. So, in terms of like having a friend, so that's scary. And does she know anyone going to Iowa? See, I did the same thing. I went to play college basketball at Ouachita Baptist University, and the only person I knew was the guy I talked to on the phone who was going to be my roommate. That was it. Like, they connected us. And my roommate, Justin, who's now an attorney in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. But anyway, great guy. But the Ouachita had connected the two of us, but that was it. I walked onto campus. I didn't know anyone. And I will confess, like, that first semester, I was so lonely sometimes. It was hard. And so Hunter was by himself too, right? He know anyone there? He didn't know anyone. Well, and Austin did the same thing. He went to Ouachita, and his roommate that he was supposed to have didn't show. So Austin was in a room by himself for the whole year, which was probably okay, but Austin was also like Hunter, like, that was a tough, lonely year. So I went through that too, and so I'm just like, I don't know what Michael's going to do. He knows that he can go play, but he also knows that could be really lonely. So, and now that his elbow's injured, this is the only option because he can't go throw for someone. Like, he can't show up at some college and go, look, I can pitch, because he can't throw right now because he's shut down for his UCL. So it's like, you got one shot, kid. He could also take the fall and just keep working out and then try a mid-year transfer, because every year I get blown up from junior colleges going, we had 2 guys flunk out and 2 guys injured their arm. We're desperate. Send us a pitcher. If they got a pulse, they put a mirror in front of them, see if it fogs up at all. It's like, you're pitching next inning, that kind of thing. So I get those emails every year in November, December of coaches freaking out because they had 4 pitchers go down for grades or for injury, and they're like, they can't finish a weekend event. They wouldn't have enough pitching. So they're like desperate. So I could get him in probably mid-year. So we'll see. If he doesn't go in the fall, then we'll probably try something like that. I'd like him to go try it at least once, and give it a try. But anyway, so our world is kind of all really in flux right now. It's weird. It's a very weird world. You guys are feeling a little bit like it's a weird world. But for us, like both of them, like at the same time, kind of like transitioning, it's like weird. So, I don't know. But you still have someone to chase around. Yeah. Oh, graduation? Oh, okay, you have 2 graduations. All right, that's cool. Where's he going to middle school? At where? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, because she went to Reagan too, right? She went where? To Truman? Oh, she was at, I thought she was at, oh, my bad. I thought she was at Reagan. Okay, she was at Truman. Okay. All right. Wow. Never slows down. Yeah. It does not slow down. Your son is, what grade is he? 6th grade. Middle school also then. Where's he going? Oh, okay. All right. Man, things are changing. And where's your oldest is middle school also, right? Or junior high? She's at Reagan? Okay. All right. What year is Mason? 3rd, 4th? 3rd? Okay. Yeah, man, that's crazy. It doesn't stop. What's crazy is that you guys aren't any older than when they were started, years ago, right? I mean, it's crazy. I haven't aged at all. Kim and I haven't aged at all. I don't know how the kids are aging, but we're not. So I don't know how that works. I don't know how that's happening, You guys haven't aged at all, but these kids, they're getting older. So I don't know what the deal is with that. That seems impossible. It seems to be in conflict that, we're not aging, but the kids are getting older. I don't know. Yeah, I saw a picture of me and Michael the other day from like when he was playing soccer when he's like 4 or something, which isn't really soccer. I don't know what that is, They just like chase this. It's like this mass of dirt just like down the field and back down the field. And eventually the ball accidentally goes in a net. And everybody's like, we scored. I'm like, oh, that was totally random. But anyway, so I have a picture from then. I was like, what happened? What happened to that guy? I used to have like color in my hair and I don't know. Boy, it's crazy. But anyway. Well, I hope you're doing well. This is a busy time of year. This is where graduation. Some of you are probably getting some graduation notices on family or friends or neighbors or something. And you are getting a ton of them because you're also doing them, right? I mean, like you have both going on. So you get that time of year. But our baseball team has senior night tomorrow night. So saying goodbye to 3 of those guys, and that's hard. I mean, like I've grown really close to at least one of them for sure. I've coached David Heaton forever. And so that's hard, saying goodbye to those guys. And they're on to because I'll see David next year. You know what, David, he's going to DBU, and he's signed up for my math class. So he's in my math class in the fall. So I'll see him all fall. He's in my math class. I mean, like, all right then. So I'll still get to see David quite a bit. But so it's time of transition. All right, well, we're speaking of transition, in the book of Revelation, we're in chapter 12. We have a new chapter in front of us. And the text is very symbolic or literal. We'll have to see what you think. A great sign, this word sign, it's the same word that John uses in the gospel for the 7 signs, turning water to wine, feeding 5,000, and so forth. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. We're going to see where that reference comes from, the sun, moon, and stars. Okay? And she was with child, and she cried out, being in labor and in pain, to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 thorns, and on his head were 7 diadems. And his tail swept away 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she gave birth, he might devour her child. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up to God and to his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, so that there she would be nourished for 1,260 days, 3.5 years. You have this 3.5 year thing again. All right, that's a complex text. All right, now let's take a look here at just a few things. So Osborne says this is a great quote. It is a common to label this section as the heart of the book, for it establishes the core theme, the war between God and his people, set between the dragon and his people, between the lamb and his counterpart and the beast. So we have this, like, the war is now formed, the lines are drawn. On one side we have God and his people, we have the dragon and his people. On this side we have the lamb, and we have the beast. We have the Trinity on this side, the Father, Son, and Spirit. We have the anti-Trinity on the other side of the dragon, the Antichrist, and the Antichrist priest. You have kind of this Trinity over here on this side. It's kind of a Trinity against Trinity. You have God's people, and you have the people that have sworn allegiance to the dragon and to the Antichrist, and under the leadership of this high priest, this Antichrist priest. So you have this triune type, following type people. And over here we have the true triune God. That's why it's called the Antichrist, that kind of thing. Though the word Antichrist is actually not in the book of Revelation, but the idea is clearly there. We see Antichrist in 1 John. We see Antichrist in some other places, but mainly in 1 John. And so, but the idea of Antichrist is clearly there. We have here, a great sign appeared in heaven. It's a woman clothed with the sun and the moon and the stars. All right, so the question is, what is this reference? And it turns out, I would not have thought this without a little study, but there was a guy who had a dream. He had a dream that involved the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all of them bowing down to him. Remember this? Joseph, remember that? He tells the story to his brothers, and for some reason they got mad. For some reason they were upset about it. You guys are all going to bow down to me. And they got mad about it. I don't know why they were so mad. They got mad about it, but they were mad. And so Genesis 3, it says this. This is Joseph. He's letting his brothers know. Joseph needed a PR consultant right now. He needed a PR consultant. If social media were around with Joseph's day, he would have gotten in trouble. Like, seriously, he would have posted stuff online where you're like, dude, you can't post that. You can't put that online. You've all seen those posts, right? You see those posts from a friend or family member or something, you're like, that's a bad idea. That's not a good post. That's a bad idea. You should take that post down, right? And so Joseph's posting on social media about the dreams he's had about his brothers and his mom and dad bowing down and worshiping him. It's probably not a good idea to put that on Facebook. Just saying. Yeah. So then he had yet another dream and informed his brothers of it. And he said, behold, I've had yet another dream. Like, stop. So he had another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. All right, and it turns out, he tells them, Mom, Dad, and you guys are all going to bow down to me. Yeah. So like, man, we're getting you some good birthday gifts this year. Yeah. In fact, they did. They got him a vacation. It was a long vacation. They got him a vacation. They put him in this group that was going on a kind of a group trip. It was a group trip. It was one of those package deals. And he got on a package deal. They went to Egypt to see the pyramids, and he was there for it was a long trip. And the bed and breakfast toward the end got a little bit rough. Like, the Airbnb was not what it was shaped up to be. He couldn't leave. It was like the Hotel California. You could try to check out, but you could never leave. He was stuck in this bed and breakfast for like years and years. So they got him a vacation because of his dream. And so that was their birthday gift to him. And new clothes too, Like, you don't need that old jacket, the multicolored one that you got from Dad. You don't need that. We'll get you a new set of clothing. So poor guy, he probably shouldn't have said anything. But this imagery of sun, moon, and stars, the sun, moon, and the 12 stars, is actually seen in other places in the Old Testament with reference to Israel. But this picture that comes from this dream plays out in other places in the book of Isaiah, in the book of Numbers, where this plays out in a few other places, okay? And the idea is that it's a representation of Israel. Jacob and Joseph's mom, the mother of promise, and the 12 stars, where Joseph's one of the 12 stars. And so the 11 other stars, he's the 12th. And so the 12 stars represents the tribes of Israel. Jacob and his wife of promise is the moon. And so this is kind of the picture here. Okay? And so that may help us a little bit in the Revelation text, because it seems like this is related. So let's go back. A great sign appeared in the heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and a head of crowns with 12 stars. See, just like Joseph's dream. It's the nation of Israel, right? Nation of Israel. I think that's the case. I think it's the nation of Israel. So she's in labor, though. And she's in labor, and she's about to give birth. And this imagery immediately might make us think of whom? Good answer. Always say Jesus, because you're almost always right at church when the Sunday school teacher says, who is this? Say Jesus. It does make us think of Jesus, because we know that Jesus was born of a woman, and he was born of her, and she's a Jewish person. She's from Israel. And so you can see how the picture of Jesus himself. But this picture, though, of a woman in labor and giving birth actually is not just seen in Jesus and Mary giving birth. And I'm helping Michael right now with the project for his class. The project's not hard. Like, he had to write up stuff, but then they said, you got to put it in a PowerPoint. So I was like, all right, dude, let's just get some famous paintings. It's the Magnificat, Mary's Magnificat. So I just went out and found some, you know how I'm obsessed with this Renaissance painting stuff. So I just went out and found like 6 Renaissance paintings. I said, we'll just throw them in we'll put Michael's words in there, but I just throw the background. I just put these Renaissance paintings. I was like, you got to do a PowerPoint. They said 12 slides. I was like, 12 slides? That's 6 pictures twice each, 2 slides each. We're good. So he sent me the write-up. I'm just going to put it real quick into PowerPoint, and it's like, we'll just use those pictures. He's like, I don't care. He's like, okay, cool. So I was just going to use, he's like, can't we just use a plain background? I was like, what's the fun in that? He's like, oh, okay, never mind. Who cares? It's not going to affect it. It has nothing to do with the grade, by the way. It's just me going, I think we should spice this up. He's like, what in the world? Just a plain PowerPoint background. It's like, no. We got to put the pictures in there. I found these Renaissance paintings. So, yeah, poor Michael. So this is my kid's whole life, It's like, hey, let's just turn this in. No. Let's take a trip to the Louvre and take some pictures. Anyway, all right, so we have this, she's in labor, and there's this text in Isaiah 26. Now, here's the thing about the book of Isaiah in Isaiah 26 and 27. There's this very depressing part of it, and then there's kind of hopeful part in chapter 27. In the very depressing part, it says this: as the pregnant woman approaches the time to give birth, she writhes and cries in labor pains. This is how we were before you, Lord. We were pregnant, we writhed in labor, we gave birth, as it seems, only to wind. We could not accomplish deliverance for the earth, nor were inhabitants of the world born. So in other words, it's a woman in labor, but she gives birth to nothing. Like, she goes through all the pain and struggle and trial, but in the end, there's no child there. It's not like a stillborn, or even. It's just, there's nothing there. It's like, went through all this labor. And that's what Israel's kind of talking about, all the pain they've been going through. And at the other end of it, it's like there's nothing to come of it. But then in Isaiah 7, there's kind of this allusion to, but one day there will come this promise. And what feels like labor for nothing will be labor for something. And so here's how then this gets handled. Some people go, this is talking about Jesus. All right, and he is the promised child for Jacob. And he's the fulfillment of all the promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses, David. He's the fulfillment of all that. And Mary is the person being described here, and she is going to give birth to the Messiah. All right, that's a possibility, that this is talking about literal childbirth by a literal person and the literal child. And there's good cause for this, to say this, because we find in... Sorry, I'm skipping around just a little bit. Okay, we'll move forward, and then we'll go back. Okay. It says, and she gave birth to a son, a male. That sounds like a person, not a nation, right? And he's going to rule all the nations with an iron rod. That sounds also like Jesus, because Isaiah chapter 9, right? Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. The government will rest on his shoulders. There's also this ruling with the rod of iron is also a reference to the offspring of Jesse or David. And it says this, and her child was caught up to God and to his throne. What does that sound like? What event does that sound like? From the New Testament. The ascension of Jesus to the right hand of the Father, right? So Acts chapter 1, the ascension, right? And it sounds like the ascension, caught up to God and to his throne. Remember Stephen, when Stephen's being stoned, right? He looks and says, I see the Son of Man standing at the right hand of the throne of God. And so the right hand of God. And so it's kind of that picture, is that that of Jesus. So some people are like, this is talking about Jesus and Mary. And it's that literal description. If so, then we have, so again, I'm going to skip around just a little bit. We have the dragon trying to destroy the child at birth. And what would that be a historical picture of? Herod the Great, that scoundrel, ordering the death of babies in Bethlehem. Remember that? So it could be a picture of that for sure. In which case, John, looking back in time at this, is talking about that historical event only. Okay? The only thing with that, though, is we're thrust forward in time, though. It says, then the woman fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared for God where she'd be nourished for 1,260 days. That does not have any reference to Mary unless the 1,260 days is how long Mary and Joseph were in Egypt. That's a possibility. Some people are like, well, maybe this is parallel. Like there's a parallel, like 3.5 years is kind of this pattern God likes, and so they go to Egypt for 3.5 years before they come out. Now that's a possibility. Archelaus dies, or no, doesn't die. Archelaus does not die. Archelaus is, he gets deposed in 6 AD, but we know he's still king of Judah when they come back, remember? Because Archelaus is he's a bad person. He's a bad human being. He was one of the 4 people that got control of Herod the Great's kingdom. Herod the Great dies, 4 people get control. Archelaus, Herod Antipas, and Herod Philip, and Herod the Great's wife. 3rd wife. 4th wife. I lost count. A wife. Yeah. He killed off a couple of them. So I lose count. He's got a little bit of Henry VIII in him. Yeah, he does. So we have these 4, this kingdom split into 4, and Herod the Tetrarch, Antipas, Philip, and Archelaus. In 6 AD, Archelaus is so bad that the Sanhedrin goes to the emperor at the time, and Augustus, and like, this dude's terrible. And so Augustus replaces him with a Roman governor. That's how the Roman governors came to be, is Archelaus. But we know Archelaus is still in power in 6 AD because, or we know he's still in power when Jesus comes out of Egypt, because it says when they were going to come out of Egypt, they thought about going back to Bethlehem, and they were told, don't go to Bethlehem, Archelaus is in charge. Go to Galilee, where Herod Antipas is not paying attention to you at all and can care less about you. Archelaus, he's a bad guy. You don't want any attention drawn to you. So they wind up in Galilee. Remember that? Remember that whole thing? So it's possible that the 1,260 days and she would be nourished. The only thing is that this sounds like it's happening after the child has been caught up to God. That's the only thing. So that makes it a little bit hard, because I don't know if you knew this, but in the order of Jesus' events in his life, he's born, they go to Egypt, they come out of Egypt, he lives a perfect life, dies on a cross, rises again from the dead, and ascends. And then doesn't go to Egypt after that. Like, that's it. So if it says, then the woman, which sounds like chronological. And if this is chronological, meaning she flees into the wilderness for 3.5 years, 42 months, after the child has been caught up to God in his throne, if that's talking about the ascension, then we have to put this in a different place. You see the challenge here in terms of timing of this thing? So, let's see. All right, so let's go back here. I know, I'm all over the map here. All right, I'm just trying to, full story. All right, so we've got, here's what we know we got. We have this woman who seems to be either in Israel or representing Israel. She has a kid. This kid winds up ascending to the right hand of God. We know that there's the devil or a dragon type personification trying to kill the child. That's what we know. And so then we're trying to place this all together. And immediately our mind goes to the birth of Jesus and those events. But we have this other deal where the woman, we know that Mary, as far as I know, Mary is not still alive today. As far as I know. And in fact, there's some historical reference to this because John winds up in Asia Minor, and John was responsible for taking care of Mary. I'm assuming Mary is passed. That's why John wound up in Asia Minor. That's why he winds up the Isle of Patmos at 90 AD. Is Mary? He took care of Mary. Mary dies. He then goes on to the Isle of Patmos, to Asia Minor, to Ephesus, and then winds up on the Isle of Patmos. So just kind of laying all that stuff out, I'm assuming that by the time John writes the Revelation, that Mary's dead. And he doesn't refer to Mary here, and he took care of her. Like if he's talking about Mary, he could have named her even. So, and if she's already dead, there's no risk of naming her, that something's going to happen to her. So this has led to some conclusions. I'll give you this is my summary of what I think people tend to say about this, okay? I'm not saying it's right. I'm just going to give you my summary of it, all right? Symbolically, it is the people of God seen as giving birth to the Messiah. Mary is a type of the entire nation and of the church, just as Israel, through Mary, gave birth to Messiah. So now the faithful church and Israel, I think also, is about to give birth to the second coming of Messiah. That's kind of the idea here. And just like at the first coming, where Herod the Great, under the inspiration of the devil, tries to kill the baby Jesus, so in the second coming or advent of Jesus, the dragon, the devil, will try to destroy both Israel and the second coming of the Messiah. I think that's kind of the idea here. Yes, when? Me too, but anyway, go ahead. Yeah, me too. It's Israel the whole time. Israel gives birth to Jesus, not Mary, but Israel. God's faithful people. In other words, it's not Mary herself. Mary's kind of the means by which God brings about the coming of Messiah from Israel. So this woman that's giving birth is Israel as a nation. That's why she has the sun, the moon, and the 12 stars. Whereas Mary would have been from one tribe and all that kind of stuff. So this is all of Israel giving birth to Messiah the first time, and the second coming of Messiah also, I think, coming through Israel. Osborne says the church, but if Israel returns as a nation and becomes part of the storyline, I could see Israel birthing the second coming of the Messiah as well. Their return to Jerusalem and their return to faithfulness in God would be the birthing of the second coming of the Messiah. If you're into kind of a dispensational worldview on this. Osborne says church. My only deal with that is this depends on how you view Israel in this. Do you view Israel as coming into play in these historical future events? If you do, then Israel is literally giving birth to the second coming of the Messiah, or seen as giving birth to the second coming of the Messiah. Same way Jesus came the first advent, he's coming a second time. That's clearly involved here because we have this birth, we have him ascend to the right hand of the Father, and then he's going to come again. And I do see that pattern, which is why if it's just Mary, then you have this weird deal because Mary's dead, so she's not around to have a second birth of the Messiah for his second coming or whatever. So I think this is more symbolic of Israel and the role of Israel in the coming of the first Messiah and the first coming of the Messiah and the second coming, the second advent of Messiah. The second time will not be through birth, any of that, but on a white horse and victory. You're referring to 70 AD, in other words? Yeah, so some people who try to make this 70 AD, there's a couple of problems. One is that this would mean that the Messiah came in 70 AD. The second comings happened in 70 AD. And I think there's some challenge to that. The world doesn't feel like, to me, the Messiah came in 70 AD. Now, there are those who are post-millennial who say, yeah, Messiah came in 70 AD, and we're now in that very happy millennial world that's described in the book of Revelation. Doesn't feel like it to me, where Isaiah, we're told if someone lives 100 years and that's all, then they die. It's shocking because they died so soon and stuff like that. I buried a 9-year-old on Friday, so it doesn't seem like that's working out for us. So that's the only issue I think you have with the preterist view that says 70 AD is, or even post-millennial, 70 AD is when this is described, that the end of this is the second coming of Messiah should be ushered in. And not some indefinite period of time, but that the dragon and the Messiah go at it. Now, what postmillennials will say is that they are going at it in the church. And that's kind of this postmillennial idea, is that the church is living this out right now. Doesn't feel like it to me, but I mean, okay. I mean, post-mill will say, and the world will keep getting better and better until Jesus ushers in this final everlasting kingdom because of the constant improvement in the world at large. I'm just not seeing it. Yeah. But there are very good theologians who hold that view, that this is describing the 3.5 years of the challenge at Jerusalem in 70 AD and its destruction. So there definitely are people who connect those. To me, it doesn't feel like Jerusalem's victorious at the end of that, whereas the book of Revelation, it seems victorious. 70 AD is a disaster. I mean, the city's burned to the ground. The survivors are all sold into slavery. This seems a little bit more victorious. Jerusalem's protected, defended. They win in the end and not lose. So I don't see it like that, but there are a lot of people who do connect these dots. Because it seems like if Israel is the woman here, that at the end of 70 AD, we haven't given birth to anything. Just destruction. Unless it's the church she's giving birth to. But even that, I would say the church is not, I don't know, like it doesn't seem to fit that pattern. But yeah, post-mills hold that view, and that they would say we're in that millennial time period now. I have a harder time with that, but there's some really good theologians who absolutely hold that view. And so for me, there's pieces of it don't fit. But to them, they're like, well, 70 AD was a real thing, which I think is true. 70 AD was a real thing, and Jesus predicted it in the Sermon on the Mount of Olives. So I think the risk of historical premillennialism or dispensationalism is ignoring 70 AD as a real event, as a biblical event. I don't think that's a safe thing to do. So I appreciate that worldview of saying, hey, 70 AD was a real deal. So, but I would separate that 70 AD from the future destruction that's being described here. That's why I'm a typological preterist. 70 AD was a type of the ultimate events that will take place. I think. I'm working through it.
So the church would be believers, right?
I put church there because Osborne did. I'm not so sure that this isn't Israel restored, isn't the birth of this coming Messiah.
So does Israel recognize Christ as the Savior?
That's what I would assume has happened, is that in this 3.5-year time period, in the midst of tribulation, and the preaching of the two witnesses has led to some kind of revival within the nation of Israel. And that Israel is the one giving birth to the second coming. Osborne noted that there are some theologians who say that that's the case. It could be both, like Israel and the church are working together. If you're a dispensationalist, it has to be Israel because the church is gone because of the rapture. If you're historical premillennialist, you're like, no, it's the church, not Israel. If you're me, you're confused and not sure.
The second coming of the Messiah, there's a week of
Sure. Well, and it
And this is why, you can put together Revelation, I mean, Romans 10, 11, and looking into the context of the future.
yeah.
I'm all over the place too.
Yeah, Romans 10 and 11, where Israel will be grafted back in. Israel will become part of that life again. If you're a dispensationalist, though, you're like, the church gets raptured out. There's no faithful people on the planet. And Israel, though, comes to saving faith, and they become like the center point of the story. Osborne, though, is historical premillennialist. So that's why he'll say the faithful church is the one giving birth to the Messiah through their preservation through persecution. And I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm just not sure. Like, I could see either side of this. If it's Israel returning into Jerusalem and then that out of those historical events, the second coming of Messiah happens, I could see that. If it's the church is the one who's faithful in the midst of persecution and is preserved for these 42 months, like this woman is preserved for 42 months, like the church becomes like this woman to whom the second coming is birthed, then either way, that's it. Either Israel's protected in the midst of the 42 months while the whole world's trying to kill them, or the church is protected for 42 months while the whole world's trying to kill them. One, or as Richard said, both. If you're a historical premillennialist, you can be both. If you're a dispensationalist, you can't say both because the church won't be here. I heard Robert Jeffers on, I don't listen to him very often, but I heard him the other day. He was in 1 Thessalonians and talked about the rapture. And yeah, so he's talking about the rapture. And we've already had conversations about some of his theology with the rapture, because he said something one time that I just about drove my car off the road. He basically implied anyone who has preterist worldview is lost and going to hell. I was like, R.C. Sproul is a preterist. I think he went to heaven. So remember that? He had the quote in there where it's like, yeah. Yeah, to me, it's like, okay. Right, yeah. Well, and it's kind of like, hey, tap the brakes a little bit. Someone doesn't believe in the exact same interpretation of the book of Revelation as you, and they have a different understanding of it. That doesn't send them to hell if they still think Jesus, Son of God, Savior of the world, died and rose again from the dead. Tap the brakes a little bit on that. Like, let's not be so harsh. But the other thing about Jeffers is that he made this claim. So 1 Thessalonians 4 is like, the dead in Christ will rise, the trumpet will sound. And then chapter 5, verse 1, he's like, it's not real. Paul didn't write the chapter break. You got to realize this. And it says, now as to, and he goes, see, that's after the rapture. See, he says, now as to, like he's on to a new topic. I was like, he's on to a new topic. Not chronologically. He's answering questions the church asked him. They asked him questions about the rapture, the coming of the Lord. They asked him questions about what happens in the end with the Antichrist and judgment. He's like, now as to this other question you asked me about, he's not putting it in chronological order. He's putting it in the order they asked him the questions. And to draw this conclusion that now as to this next thing, meaning he's now chronologically on to the next thing, is a massive leap. And I'm like, dude, that's just not safe hermeneutics. Paul has new topics all the time, and they're not always in chronological order. He'll say, now as to this thing, I want to talk to you about this. He's right in saying that this is how Paul says, I'm going to talk about a new subject. But he's not right by saying it's always in chronological order. That's just not true. I give examples from Pauline letters where Paul's like, now as to this other topic, let me tell you about this. And sometimes he'll go backwards in times on that. So that was a huge, if your whole pre-tribulational rapture is linked to that phrase in 1 Thessalonians 5, boy, that is banking on something that I don't think is justified in the text. It might be right, but the text doesn't justify it. So anyway, this create all this stuff. There's a mystery here, okay? So there's some mystery. What do we know? Jesus is coming back. What do we know? I think Israel is somehow involved in these end time things. If this is yet future, if this isn't 70 AD. But there's a lot of mystery to this. And we may not be able to figure all of it out now in advance. And we may even struggle to figure it out if we're here when things are unfolding. But the end result will be an everlasting kingdom that God will usher in, that all believers in Christ Jesus will experience, and he will have victory over sin, death, the devil, shame, guilt. Persecution of the church will be reversed to the blessing of the church. And so stay faithful, stay true, and he will work this out to our everlasting joy and his glory. And then these details, we kind of think through them, talk through them, and we're probably going to be right about 50% of the time, and the other 50% we'll figure out when we get to heaven and see Jesus face to face, and he can go, no, this verse meant this. And you're like, oh, now I see it. So anyway, I lay out for you these various ideas. I've told you I'm kind of historical premillennial, but these things are hard to nail down sometimes, and so we'll keep working through it. All right? All right, let's pray together. God, you are gracious and kind. Thank you for your word. Help us to understand from the scripture what we need to know to preserve both our daily walk with you and for the church, and to be obedient and faithful in all things. We pray this in the name of Christ. Amen.